Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna. Able to hear me?
Yes, Prabhuji, loud and clear.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Dear devotees, Dandot Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for joining today. Let's welcome all of you saying 3 times Haribol. Haribol.
Haribol. Haribol. Haribol.
Let's also welcome His Grace Amritananda Prabhu. Amritananda Prabhuji is taking class today. So let's welcome Prabhuji saying 3 times Haribol. Haribol.
Haribol. Haribol. Haribol.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Please begin.
Thank you. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you for joining today evening's Bhagavad Gita program. We'll be starting a new chapter 14. Simeshwar Prabhu requested that I do this. I thank him very much, simply because every time when I have to do class, the absorption or the reading and the understanding gets a little more deeper. So thank you for that, Simeshwar Prabhu. I'm going to go to Veda base. So if someone would please confirm that you can see the screen.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah, we can see the screen.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanan Namaskritya Naram Chaivam Narotamam Devim Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jayamudirate Nashtaprayeshu Bhatreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhakti Naishtakem. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Param Bhuya Pravakshyami Jnananam Jnanam Uttamam Yat Jnatva Munyah Sarve Param Siddhim Ito Gata. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Param Bhuya Pravakshyami Jnananam Jnanam Uttamam Yat Jnatva Munyah Sarve Param Siddhim Ito Gata. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Para Bhuya Pravakshyami Jnananam Jnanam Uttamam Yajnatva Munyah Sarve Para Siddhim Ito Gata. Would someone please like to chant the verse?
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Param Bhuva Param Jnanam Jnanam Uttamam Yajnatva Munyah Sarve Param Siddhim Gata.
Thank you, Bimal Prabhu. Somebody else, please.
I'll try, Prabhuji.
Please.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Param Bhuya Pravakshyami Jnanam Uttamam Yaj Jnatva Munaya Sarve Param Siddhim Ito Gata.
Very good. Thank you, Mataji. One more.
Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Param Bhuya Parvakshyami Jnanam Utmama Yaj Jantva Manaya Sarve Pranam Siddham Ito Gata.
Very nice, Vandana Mataji. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. I made a lot of mistakes, but...
No. Don't think that way. I mean, we are like little children to Krishna. And how when a child learns to talk, it is so pleasing to the parents' ears. So always try. Don't feel shy. Don't feel
Thank
shy.
you, Prabhuji.
It's that effort. Thank you.
Thank you.
Synonym. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Param, transcendental. Bhuya, again. Pravakshami, I shall speak. Jnananam, of all knowledge. Jnanam, knowledge. Uttamam, the supreme. Yat, which. Jnatva, knowing. Munaya, the sages. Sarve, all. Param, transcendental. Siddhim, perfection. Ita, from this world. Gata, attained. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Again, I shall declare to you the supreme wisdom, the best of all knowledge, knowing which all sages have attained the supreme perfection." Purport. From the 7th chapter to the end of the 12th chapter, Shri Krishna in detail reveals the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, the Lord himself is further enlightening Arjuna. If one understands this chapter through the process of philosophical speculation, he will come to an understanding of devotional service. In the 13th chapter, it was clearly explained that by humbly developing knowledge, one may possibly be freed from material entanglement. It has also been explained that it is due to association with the modes of nature that the living entity is entangled in this material world. Now, in this chapter, the Supreme Personality explains what those modes of nature are, how they act, how they bind, and how they give liberation. The knowledge explained in this chapter is proclaimed by the Supreme Lord to be superior to the knowledge given so far in other chapters. I'll read this again. Please focus on it. The knowledge explained in this chapter is proclaimed by the Supreme Lord to be superior to the knowledge given so far in other chapters. By understanding this knowledge, various great sages attained perfection and transferred to the spiritual world. The Lord now explains the same knowledge in a better way. This knowledge is far, far superior to all other processes of knowledge thus far explained. And knowing this, many attained perfection. Thus, it is expected that one who understands this 14th chapter will attain perfection. Hare Krishna. Om Atyantimirandasya Kyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Katahmayam Dadati Swapatantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parichana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Krishna Bhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedant Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesh Shunyavadi Paschatya Teshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you again, everyone. So today we just read the shloka, synonym, translation, and the purport. So let's go a little bit deeper and see what our learning focus is. As usual, these classes would be interactive. So it will be, I'll discuss the main points, and then after that, we all could share our thoughts and a realization. That's how we'll understand the subject matter better. So please, my humble request, everyone, please participate. Don't feel shy. Don't feel that, am I saying the right thing or the wrong thing? There's nothing like right thing or wrong thing. It's all that we're learning. So today's learning focus is going to be the overview of the modes of material nature. So we all have heard, if you've been in ISKCON for a while, you understand this modes of material nature, right? And over here, you see this picture that you have the Mataji in the yellow. She is the mode of goodness. There is Mataji in the red. She is the mode of passion. And Mataji in the dark blue, mode of ignorance. And you see these are the threads. So we all are like puppets. Literally, we all are like puppets being controlled by these three modes of material nature. And top of everything is Krishna is there. So we'll understand what this chapter 14 is, which discusses the mode of material nature. Then we'll get into more depth about what is this mode of material nature, how it acts, how it entraps the jiva, and the same material mode modes of material nature, how it can be, in spite of being controlled by that, how the jivatma can get liberated from its clutches. And then, of course, your reflections and thoughts on the modes of material nature. We'll see some examples and then what it is we can do to get out of its clutches. As ever, my deep obeisances and humble gratitude and respect to His Grace Gauranga Priya Prabhu. His Bhagavad Gita notes is what I refer to when I prepare for Bhagavad Gita classes. And then, of course, what I've learned over the years listening to so many Vaishnavas, the Guru Parampara, my Guru Maharaj, other Gurus, so many of you Vaishnavas. So thank you all. So this is the overview, understanding the concept of goodness, passion, and ignorance. English, we call it goodness, passion, ignorance. The equivalent in Sanskrit is Satagun, passion is Rajagun, and ignorance is Tamagun. You must be familiar with these terms. So it is divided in 4 chapters, chapter 14. The first section talks about what is liberation and conditioning of jiva, the first 4 texts. So Krishna glorifies this knowledge. He says this is the most important knowledge of whatever he has discussed so far. This is the most important knowledge. And he also mentions that he impregnates the jivas in this material energy, this shrishti, this entire cosmic creation that we see, the material cosmic creation is how he has impregnated. You know that, Mahavishnu with his glance, he impregnates the material energy. So this is how we get embodied. We'll discuss more details on that. Now, section 2 is about how these 3 modes tie us up. And then what it ties us to is goodness is to happiness. Then the Rajagun is to fruitive activities, that compulsion to do acts for, some kind of gain or result. And the Tamagun, ignorance, ties us to madness. Madness is not knowing. Self-harm is something mad to do, like khud ka paon pe kuladi marna. That is considered madness. That's what the mode of ignorance does. Then section 3 talks about how we should recognize the supremacy of this mode. No one can get out of this mode. No jiva who is embodied with a material body can get out of this mode. It is supreme. You just can't. You're very insignificant. Though we are spiritual in nature, we are so tiny, infinitesimal, and this is so powerful. So we have to recognize and not just take it for granted that on my own ability, I will be able to transcend these modes. And what happens is these modes compete with each other within the jiva. So we can understand this through our own life examples, that at times we are in the mode of goodness. We feel peace, we feel calm, we feel happy, we are aware of things. At times we are, we have strong desires, very strong desires. And at times it is even in sheer ignorance, bewilderment. We can feel this. And all this is happening within us 24/7. At times, certain mode is predominant. At times, the other mode is predominant. Now, which mode takes over is how my Guru Maharaj explains. We have on our shoulder a good dog and a bad dog, and they're always fighting with each other. Now, which dog wins is the one whom you feed. The one whom you feed gets stronger, and the other dog is starved. So whom we feed, that dog gets stronger. So of this, we can understand ignorance is the lowest. Above that is passion, and above that is goodness. Now, to get even beyond goodness is what you call the liberation or transcending. But you have to come at least to the platform of goodness to go beyond goodness. You can't form the mode of ignorance, get straight away out of this clutches of the modes of material nature. So goodness is things like knowledge, passion is attachment and uncontrollable desire, and ignorance is laziness. This laziness, I don't feel like doing this, procrastinating, I'll put it off for tomorrow. So that's what is the mode of ignorance. Then section 4 talks about acting and dying within the modes, very important. All of us are acting within these modes. We are compelled to act. You're forced to act, no other choice, either in goodness, passion, or ignorance. And then, finally, a quota of breaths get over and the soul leaves this body. So what it says is the results of one action and results after death are predominated by specific mode and brings about a certain result. What this means is at the time of death, whatever activity, whatever mode has been predominant in our life, depends what we have been feeding it, as I told you, those are the thoughts that come at the time of death. Death is a very traumatic experience for a person who's not a devotee, both physically and mentally. Physically, it is said it's something like 40,000 scorpions biting you. It's very painful because the soul is so attached to the body. He thinks he's the body and he's being pulled, literally torn away from the body. So it's a very painful situation. And instinctively, the soul's thoughts go to whatever has been the predominant mode that he has lived his life. He or she has lived his or her life in. So if it's in the mode of goodness, the next, at the time of death, whatever is that thought, the next life that jiva gets would be in the mode of goodness. Similarly, if, it's too attached, some desire is there, it gets accordingly to whatever the thoughts are. So that's what section 4 talks about. Finally, section 5 gives the solution. How do you get out of these modes? So there are two ways. First is to recognize that whatever is happening within these modes. Nothing is happening outside the 3 modes of material nature. However, Krishna conscious activities, bhakti, devotional service, can transcend these modes. So chapter 14 is nothing but a root cause analysis. We know that we have a problem. So getting to the root of that problem. So when we understand this root, that everything is happening within the modes of goodness, passion, ignorance, then we know what is the way out. We know what to do, what not to do. So to give you a background, this is the situation with all of us who are now embodied with this material body. So what causes us to get embodied is basically misuse of free will. We are envious. We say, why should Krishna be the enjoyer? Why should I be the servant? I want to be the enjoyer. I want to do it separate from Krishna. So Krishna, in his causeless mercy, says, fine, here I made this material world for you. This is where you can go. And that's what we're all trying to do. We're trying to be controller, but we have this madness. We have this illusion. We are the controller, but actually we are being controlled by the modes of material. We think we are enjoying, but in reality, we are suffering. So what happens is we have this ignorance and illusion, and we are Sharira Vidya Jala. We get embodied with this matter. The spirit entity gets entrapped into a material. It's a mismatch. Spirit is eternal, full of knowledge, full of bliss. Matter is dull, ignorant, asat. It is temporary, not aware, and niranand, full of misery. And because the soul is active, it has to act. It performs these activities, which are either karma, vikarma, and that traps us into this cycle of birth, old age, disease, and death. And that's what our current situation is. Morning, we sing this prayer, samsara dava, nalalida loka. So as I was mentioning before, we have this ignorance and illusion. We want to be the enjoyer. So little things that give us pleasure is actually not pleasure. It is actually just gateway to another misery. It's just a matter of time before those seeds fructify into its fruit of misery. And we can see it, whatever in our life, whether it is relationships or whether it is things that we acquire. There will be a level. We rise to everyone's level of disappointment, and everyone rises to a level of disappointment. And we fool ourselves and we fool others in terms of accommodating and adjusting and getting along with each other. But it's only temporary. So now understand what is the mode of material nature. So for that, first let's understand who Krishna is. Krishna is the Shaktiman, the energetic. He's the one who's the possessor and the controller of the energy. And his energies are classified as para. Para energy has two types, which is the internal superior energy and the marginal Parashakti, that is also a superior form of energy. So these two energies make up the internal and the marginal makeup of his Parashakti, and the other type of his energy is the external energy, which is the inferior energy. So marginal is superior to inferior, internal is superior to marginal, and Krishna is the controller of all this energy. So this is what first we have to understand very clearly. Krishna, the energetic, Shaktiman, and his Parashakti and Aparashakti. Parashakti is internal as well as marginal, and then there is Aparashakti, which is the inferior energy. Okay, now if we understand this little further, there is Krishna, who's the supreme controller, his Parashakti that we spoke about. That Parashakti, the embodiment is Yogamaya, that is Subhadra Maharani. So she is the superintendent of the Parashakti. And then you have the marginal energy, that is all of us, all living entities, whatever form we may take. We may have a male, female, a dog, cat, bacteria, doesn't matter. Any living energy is the marginal energy. And now we have the Aparashakti. Aparashakti in characteristic is exactly opposite of what the Parashakti is. It's the inferior nature, and the superintendent is Mahamaya. And then comes this material creation. Sanskrit, they call it Shrishti, and the predominant modes are Satagun, goodness, we discussed this, Rajagun, passion, Tamagun, ignorance. By the way, you will see over here that there are these color codes. So it is said that Satagun, the mode of goodness, is yellow in color. Rajagun is passion, is always in red, and Tamagun is a dark bluish color. That is the ignorance. Now this Satagun yellow color you can see is a little different than the Parashakti over here, where it is pure level, pure yellow, and over here it is kind of a dull yellow. So this is just a pictorial representation so that you could understand how this three modes, what it is and how it is set up. Now when we misuse a free will, the jiva, instead of being under the control of Yogamaya in its natural position, comes in over here under the control of the material agent, Mahamaya. So Krishna glances here, we say that, hey, we don't want to be subordinate to you. We want to be the master. Krishna says, great, you can go here. Try and enjoy the best you can. So it's like you're serving out a prison term over here, the material creation. So misuse of free will, that's where when Mahavishnu glances, all these rebellious jivas like you and I we get embodied into the material nature, and we get this physical, gross and subtle body. Now, how it acts. Okay, so understand that we are the soul, we are embodied, we are trapped in this material body. Then covering the soul is the false ego. Ego is basically the sense of I am, the sense of being, the sense of I-ness. So that I am. Now, this false ego, there is a true ego and there is a false ego. True ego is understanding who I am. Who I am, the Shastras define, Jivera Swarupa, Krishnera Nityadas. We are the eternal servant of Krishna. However, the false ego doesn't understand that it is the servant. Why? Because material nature and that ignorance is there, illusion is there, that madness is there, is we think that we are this body. So this false ego is what is connecting us. This material body is made up of a subtle body of intelligence and mind. So these are all the subtle bodies, mind, intelligence, and false ego. And then we have the gross body. Gross body, you can see this, right? What I have, my skin, my eyesight, the five senses that we have. So these are the gross body. Then the subtle body is the mind, intelligence, and false ego. And that's what the soul is entrapped with. Now, if you see the soul, when it is embodied with matter, it identifies with the body. So though the soul is a separate and a distinct and a unique entity, he thinks he's all this. My hand, my intelligence, my wife, my child, my car, I, me, myself, mine. That is the ignorance. So all bodily related, my religion, my country, whatever those different titles may be. So this is what happens when the soul gets embodied with matter. And then what happens is the soul is an active principle. It has to act. Activity is the platform in which the soul derives pleasure. That's what it is. Action. Soul is not inert. Soul is active. Matter is inert. Soul is active. So it has to act. And when it is embodied with matter, when it is identifying with this body, it has three types of activities it can perform. One is karma, which are called binding. These are all non-Krishna conscious. KC stands for Krishna conscious, non-Krishna conscious activities. There is karma. There is vikarma. That is, karma is nothing but action has a corresponding reaction. So you act in the mode of goodness. So for example, altruism, दान-पान, किसी भूखे को खाना खिलाया, hospitals for the sick and the needy, you construct that, all bodily related. So that is all good karma. Similarly, there is bad karma also. So for all acts of ignorance, all acts of violence, hatya, things like that. So these are all karmic activities. Vikarma is really abominable activities like arson, murder, things like that. So which you have very severe consequences. So there's consequences, severe consequences. And then finally, there's something which is called akarma, which are all devotional activities, Krishna conscious activities, which liberates the soul. You see over here the soul, it liberates him from all this. Now what karma and vikarma does, it basically binds the person in the cycle of birth, old age, disease, and death. So when we die, here is a pictorial representation of the person dying, leaving the body, the gross body is behind, and this is where the subtle body. At the time of death, the mind, intelligence, and the ego is basically a transportation vehicle. So the soul rides on the mind, intelligence, and false ego and goes, whatever are the thoughts at the time of death, whatever was that dominant mode, goodness, passion, or ignorance, it takes it to either rebirth or to liberation. Now, if we have been in akarma, if we have been leading a life of devotional service, where every thought, word, deed, where the act itself is for the pleasure of Krishna and Krishna's, then it is instinctive. It is only natural that whatever you're used to, those are the thoughts that come to you. So at the time of death, we'd still be in that frame of bhakti, and that's liberating. It liberates. Or it is goodness, passion, or ignorance. You have to come back in rebirth. So this is how the the modes of material nature acts, and how it binds us and how it liberates us. So now, devotees, let's hear your thoughts. So can it's open to everybody. You can unmute. Let's take some examples of what are acts of ignorance, passion, goodness, and what are acts of devotional service or karma. Hare Krishna. Please don't feel shy.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, always to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
It was a wonderful class, Prabhuji, like very nice use of the color codes and very nicely presented the three modes of material nature. I actually had a question before we do this exercise. Is it okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Prabhuji, like you were mentioning something about this Yog Maya on that slide, Yog Maya and Mahamaya.
Yes.
So you said that Jiva is initially under the control of the Yog Maya.
Yeah.
And when like he makes use of he misuses his free will,
yeah.
he gets the control of Mahamaya.
Yeah.
So but in like I think in the 7th chapter in Bhagavad Gita, somewhere it was mentioned that Yog Maya is also responsible for taking the Jiva away from Krishna, even the Yog Maya, right? In some cases, I don't remember that shloka, but in 7th chapter,
there is whatever Yog Maya does, Mataji, she does it for facilitating the pastimes of Krishna to increase his pleasure. So at times, even there could be bewilderment, or at times when Krishna appeared in the jail of Kamsa, correct? He appeared as a foe, so they were awestruck. His parents were awestruck. And then Yog Maya, put her to sleep, put all the guards to sleep in that way. However, that kind of bewilderment is different. So whatever emotions and whatever we feel over here in the material world, the material world is nothing but a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. So when Yog Maya, if she is creating situations, Krishna also hides from the gopi, but then their longing for him increases, their intensity. So it's bringing them closer and closer in one sense. So though he's physically not present, that Vipralamba Bhav comes in. So whatever Yoga Maya does will just facilitate for Krishna's pleasure. And when Krishna is pleased, naturally the devotee is also pleased. And Krishna's pleasure is the devotee's pleasure. However, what Mahamaya does is she actually keeps us away from Krishna. She actually keeps us away from Krishna by putting us in this entrapment of the three modes and the illusion that we are under. So she will make all the facilities that we get further and further entrapped. And we keep wanting to be the Ishvara. We keep wanting to enjoy separate from Krishna. She makes all these facilities. And that being separate from Krishna is not taking you to Krishna, it's taking you further away from Krishna. So that is the difference between Yoga Maya, separation, quote unquote, and what Mahamaya is doing. Does that answer your question, Mataji?
Yes, Prabhuji. So if I understand it right, there's a difference of the people who are in Krishna consciousness and who are not.
Yes.
So the people who don't fall into Krishna consciousness, they are under the control of Mahamaya. But the people who are in Krishna consciousness, but still the people who have doubts on the Krishna's pastimes, like they believe in Krishna, but still they don't have the 100% faith.
Yeah.
And have like based on the pastimes of like Krishna, like Krishna's birth or Ras Leela and all those kind of things. That's when Yog Maya comes into the picture and she bewilders those.
No, not necessarily. So Yoga Maya, you can look at it as she's the spiritual world superintendent in the spiritual world. We are all in the material world. Now in material world, some fortunate people like us have the opportunity to engage in bhakti. Now, each one of us is at a different stage of bhakti. What has happened is that we are still embodied and we have countless millions of lifetime of conditioning. Conditioning is this, Mataji. This is conditioning. This identification, no? This is our conditioning. So what is happening is now we come into Krishna consciousness. And in Krishna consciousness, we're over here. So we understand, we get some knowledge, we understand the philosophical appreciation, intellectual appreciation. We try putting it into practice, but still it seems to be an uphill task because we are so used to doing this. We're all creatures of habits. We are used to doing this, but slowly and steadily, as long as we do it consistently, no matter what, even if it is imperfectly, but we are still doing it, correct? That's where that mercy of Krishna through the Guru and the Vaishnavas comes to us, and it gives us that empowerment. So it is something like this false ego is gradually turning into what we call the true ego. And from a philosophical appreciation that Jivera Swarupa Hoy, we actually realize it. We actually realize it. Most of the knowledge and most of what we know is at an intellectual level. We haven't still realized it. So when we do all these practices, then what happens is that slowly but surely, our consciousness gets transformed. So instead of being, I am this, I am that, I am the servant of Krishna and Krishna's. At that point in time, the more and more we get surrendered, this is called surrendering the false ego. We are surrendering it. The more and more we are surrendering, the more and more we get under the spiritual control of Yoga Maya. So till such time when we are at that state, so what happens is we may be on this, all three mixed. Then what happens is Satagun starts dominating. The more and more we engage in bhakti, this mode of goodness becomes a predominant trait. Like we'll be clean, you get up early, bodily cleanliness, the words that we speak will be clean, not duplicity, not political, not diplomatic, keep it simple living, high thinking. We get onto this platform. And then slowly we can transcend even from this mode of goodness and come to what is called the pure goodness, Shuddha Sattva, the pure goodness platform. And that's when we get under the control of Yoga Maya. So we could physically be in this material world. So it is a matter of our consciousness. As long as our consciousness, as long as we are engaged in Krishna consciousness, then all the opportunities are made. And what Mahamaya does, Mahamaya will do her best. Mahamaya will do her best to keep you back. She'll put all kinds of temptations, all kinds of things will happen that will make us go back to our old habits. But all the same, if we persevere, as long as we are persevering, as long as we are in the company, that becomes like Vaishnava Sangha becomes like an armor. That becomes an armor around us, which will help us keep continuing on that path. Doesn't matter, we may slip, we may fall, we may take 2 steps backward. But as long as you're in that company, you get on. Finally, you get to a stage where this consciousness is no longer I, me, myself, mine. That false ego becomes pure ego. And that's where we get under Yoga Maya's control. Is that good?
Yes, Prabhuji, that is good. Like, but I think like what I was trying to ask is, when does Yoga Maya cause the bewilderment? Like, as it's mentioned in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So it's mentioned
that bewilderment, as I explained to you earlier, is see, it depends on what is my level of purity. Correct? So if I'm in Yoga Maya's, if I'm under the control of Yoga Maya, what Yoga Maya is doing is she is making us, whatever Yoga Maya does will increase Krishna's pleasure and also bring us closer to Krishna, the end result. So keep that first thing in mind. And whatever Mahamaya is doing, that kind of bewilderment is taking us further away from Krishna. Is taking us. So in the Rajagun, which is there even in the spiritual world, that Rajagun, that desire is for Krishna. Similarly, where there is this level of ignorance, so-called ignorance that we say, it's not the ignorance of who I am and who Krishna is. But there may be a certain case where, or let me give you an example. Now we'll have Kartik month coming up, and Mother Yashoda is chastising Damodar. He's running away. So he's being naughty. But that naughtiness doesn't irritate or anger people. It gives them so much pleasure. Though Krishna breaks all the matkis of these gopis, they are waiting, when will he come to my house and steal my butter? So you see that difference. So that's all Yogamaya is making these arrangements. And that bewilderment which you're talking about is depending on your level of transformation of your consciousness. Till such time, we are all under the control of Mahamaya. So the Yogamaya is, and Yogamaya will act even here in the material world when our consciousness is transformed. I was just listening to a lecture, Srila Prabhupada. There was a Mayavad, and he was criticizing Krishna. He was having an argument with Prabhupada. And he was saying, yeah, your bhakti and everything is good. And he was going on and on and on and on and on. And then finally, Prabhupada got so angry that he slammed the table. Now, externally, it may seem to be anger is in the mode of passion. If externally, it may say, in the mode of ignorance. It may seem to be, Prabhupada with all his knowledge and a pure devotee. He's getting angry. So is that Mahamaya is Prabhupada under the control of Mahamaya? No. Prabhupada is angry on Krishna's behalf, not for himself. If someone has insulted Prabhupada, he's not going to take offense if someone insults Prabhupada, because he knows he's not this body. All these insults are to the body, to the mind, the insult is, and I'm not the mind. But when someone is blaspheming Krishna, he became furious. He became furious. So Prabhupada is not under Mahamaya. He is with Yogamaya, under her control. You understand the distinction?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Yeah.
So if we can get on anyone else has a question, or we can carry with this. If someone can give some examples, acts of ignorance, passion, goodness, and Krishna conscious activities, and finally, how to remain engaged in bhakti. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Namra Pranama, Krishna.
Krishna.
Wonderful class. Prabhuji, so ignorance would be like, just like you said, sleepiness, laziness, not waking up early. That's what I think, watching movies, etc. Would that be all in ignorance, right?
Okay.
And then the passionate activities, like you're working lots of hours for making money, material attachments. And then the act of goodness would be like charity, opening hospitals, etc.
Very good. Can someone give me 2 more ignorance? Full marks for participation, huh? It's not for the answer itself.
Would you want to speak anything right now?
Yeah, Bimal Prabhu.
like then ask maybe
I can't hear you, Prabhu.
what I'm trying to say, Prabhuji, one is meat eating, right?
Sorry?
Meat eating. Meat.
No,
You
your
are
mic
not
is
eating.
not, your audio is not coming clear.
How about now, Prabhuji? I'm using
Yeah,
the AirPods.
this is better.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say, Prabhuji, meat eating. People who eat meat, right?
Okay.
That would go in the mode of ignorance.
Yes.
And not following scriptures and going against scriptures is something like a mode of ignorance. So they are ignoring the scriptures, what is written in Bhagavad Gita. They don't want to follow that, right? So they want to just ignore whatever it is in Bhagavad Gita. That is also one of the mode of ignorance, sort of. I think.
How about passion, goodness?
Goodness is basically like getting up early and doing chanting as like a mode of goodness, and doing the aartis in the house is all the mode of goodness.
Actually, those are
And
Krishna conscious acts.
Okay, so we cannot call those as activities of mode of goodness.
Krishna conscious acts are mode of goodness, but all goodness is not Krishna conscious acts.
Okay.
So someone can give passion and goodness one example.
Prabhuji, like praising others, reaching out to help, would that be act of goodness?
Come again?
I said like praising others, appreciating, and reaching out to help others, those who are in need.
Yes. The praising others can also be act of passion, because I need something. So what we say, flattery.
Okay.
So hard work for money. Money is that lobh, the greed, which comes in. So what would you say are Krishna conscious activities? Now Mataji and Prabhu have given the
Devotional service. The Krishna conscious activity is chanting, Vaishnav Sangha. What else? Kirtan.
Actually,
book distribution. Spreading
actually
Krishna consciousness.
every thought, word, and deed can literally be an act of devotional service, as long as for whom it is being performed. If it is for the pleasure of Krishna and Krishnas, that becomes an act of devotional service. If it becomes for I, me, myself, mine, it will become one of these ignorance, passion, or goodness. So Krishna conscious act is just keep in mind that for whom, for whose pleasure and whose beneficiary of that outcome. So whether mera usme fayda hoye ya na hoye, whether I benefit from it or it doesn't matter. Krishna and Krishna's pleasure and Krishna and Krishna's benefit. That act, word, thought, deed is Krishna consciousness act. So you could light a matchstick and smoke a cigarette, and that nicotine will give you a rush and you'll feel nice. But that same matchstick you can light an agarbatti, and offer the incense to the deity, that is for Krishna's pleasure. So the act of lighting the matchstick itself can either become a act of ignorance or karmic, or it could become act of devotion. And Krishna conscious acts, yes, Mataji, as what you said, rightly so, japa, book distribution, Vaishnav Sangha, preparing bhoga, eating prasadam, book distribution, so many active DT services there, doing DT seva, temple seva, so many activities are there. And if you can look at it in the broad category of the 9 limbs of devotional service. So those are the thing, japa. And the fact that we get up early, for example, is you're not being lazy and you come on the platform of goodness. So rising early, having a bath, being clean externally through, bathing and all these other purificatory things that we do. And internally also, internally is what we eat, prasadam. So these are the things.
Even cooking, Prabhuji, it is difference between cooking for friends for a party, you want appreciation,
Absolutely.
And then cooking again, bhoga for Krishna is totally different. You're doing it for the pleasure of Krishna.
Very good, very good. So the bhoga that we prepare, the very fact that you got into your car and went to Sabzi Mandi to buy the raw material, that becomes an act of devotional service, because that sabzi that you're buying is for Krishna. When you're buying that sabzi, you see, is the tomato firm? There are no daag, usme kuch nahi hai, and whatever. You know how we...
even like Krishna, picking flowers too. Flowers too, to take to your friend, or for Krishna,
When we sleep, when we get up, when we brush up, everything, the job that we go for, that also is an act of devotional service. So just keep this in mind. If it is mera fayda hai usme, there is some outcome which is to my benefit, that is karmic. And if it is for Krishna and Krishna's, that very same act becomes a karma. Now, the big point is, how do we remain focused in bhakti? Because as I mentioned, all of us have this conditioning of millions of lifetime where I am in the center. Now here there is a paradigm shift and we are saying Krishna is in the center. So intellectually, philosophically, we can understand, Krishna is in the center, makes sense. But how do we remain focused? So, japa, how do we have the discipline to get up early? How do we have the discipline to chant with attention? How do we have the discipline not to get tempted to eat non-bhoga / prasadam? So how do we remain focused in performing bhakti?
Constant company of the Vaishnavas, reading scriptures, attending classes like this, day and night.
Yes.
The most important is getting inspired by other Vaishnavas, you can feel it, like at least I can when I'm in the Bhagavatam class or the Bhagavad Gita class, and then I'm at my job, the influence over there, the materialistic influence, until and unless these classes are there, this Sangha is there, it is so hard because it is so challenging to be in that environment. It's constant, these constant lectures, the constant reminders are so important. At least for me, they are, and they help me. Especially the Bhagavatam class in the morning, it just helps me. I always grasp something, even like one thought, and that, think about it the entire day, try to follow, and it just keeps me going. And the same, to sum up the day, like the Bhagavad Gita class, helps. Okay, the constant reminder of keeping Krishna in the center and not getting carried away by what you listen from your colleagues or what you're watching, because it's the
Very good.
jealousies and the envies around you and the competition, materialistic competition around you, not to be influenced by that.
So these are the guidelines that we're doing, right? Sangha, reading, acts of devotional service. Now the question comes is that, fine, I can do it for some time, but how do I do it when the going is really hard? When there are real upheavals in my life, either personal or professional or whatever there are, how can I still remain focused? When my body or my mind doesn't cooperate with me, how do I still? And it happens to all, at least it happens to me. There are days when I just feel that, oh God. And there are days you actually look forward to. So how, when the going gets tough, we still keep going? There are other devotees. I see there is one Pankaj Prabhu. Pankaj Prabhu, what are your thoughts? How can one persevere?
So Prabhuji, like Mataji said, I think constantly reminding herself through classes or visiting and reading and listening and chanting. We get into a situation wherein we are carried away. We get carried away because of the work environment, the political situation we get into. But we have to pull our thoughts back and again refocus.
Good. Now, you raised a very good point called reminders. And reminders can be little notes that we set ourselves, mental reminders, physical reminders, even having pictures of devotional pictures in your work environment, in your home environment, in your mode of travel. That has a very, very positive effect. So we have these reminders that will help us go through all this. The other thing is, Vandana Mataji has raised her hand. Mother
Yes,
Vandana.
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna, Dandat Pranam. My question was what just Prabhuji just mentioned, that you get carried away in work, but you still, as you said, it was like I was going to ask and he asked and you answered that when you go for work and for 8 hours or 6 hours, you just get carried away. Only in the break is when you think that, okay, I have to do my couple of rounds or, read a little. So is that what mode of passion or ignorance?
Mataji, it is the consciousness with which you go to work. So if you look at your job as, I'm going to work because I get a salary, and with this money, I'm able to take care of my deities which are at home, and I'm able to take care of the family, Krishna's family, and I'm the caretaker. So that work becomes, so yes, you should be, if your work requires you to be competitive, if your work requires you to be in a mode of passion also, that is fine. You're doing it for Krishna. Arjuna on the battlefield was killing hundreds and thousands of people. Killing. He was killing them, but it was for Krishna, on Krishna's order. So it is just a level of consciousness that with which we go. And every day, if we say a small little prayer, for example, like before going to work, be grateful. Thank you, Krishna. You've given me this job opportunity, and whatever Lakshmi that we earn, I'm using it in, please guide me how I can use it in your service of you and your devotees. And your family is also Krishna's devotee. They need not necessarily be chanting, but look at them as they are Krishna's devotee, and you're a caretaker for that. So just that act becomes an act of devotional service. On your way to work, if you drive a car, you could listen to some kirtan, you could listen to
Definitely,
some
Prabhuji. Definitely, I do that.
Yeah, so, and whilst you're doing your work, be fully focused on your work, whatever that job is. Don't slack off and read Bhagavatam or something. And in your free time, like lunch break, if you can chant around, well and good. If you can read something, well and good. So that's how we can remain focused. And the other thing is having a sense of discipline. That also is important. And discipline will bring about consistency. And through consistency comes progress. And very simple example is if we can't get up early, like they recommend the best hours to do japa is early morning because the mind is less agitated. So, we may not be able to get up early. But if we make a discipline, so if, for example, someone gets up at 7 in the morning, then what you say is that, fine, I will get up at 6:45, 15 minutes early rather than 7. And that 15 minutes that you get early, chant 1 round, chant 2 rounds if you can in that. And then do it for a week, do it for 2 weeks. Then you'll see it becomes, gradually it'll become a habit. Then you say, okay, fine, I'll get up at 6:30. Then I'll get up at 5:45. I'll get up at 5, to whatever you can take it to. And of course, if you have to get up early, means that night before you'll have to sleep 15 minutes early instead of watching news or Netflix or some kind of a relaxation, whatever is there. So like that, it is that discipline will happen. And as we continue doing that, then you say, hey, I can, getting up early is not that much of an issue. And there will be these peaks and valleys. And then again, we'll slip because of a habit. But keep moving ahead. Don't remain stuck where we are. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhu's Matajis. So this is where it is. Material pleasure means pleasure of the senses. And Prabhupada says spiritual pleasure means pleasure of Krishna. And here's this example. A flower someone is giving to his beloved. My beloved will feel, my sweetheart will be very happy by smelling the fragrance of this rose. And the same rose, you offer it that, Krishna's senses will be pleased. And then after that, it becomes our prasad. And then we smell it. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Wonderful, wonderful discussion, wonderful talk.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
All praise to Prabhupada.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Simeshwar Prabhu, he may be on the altar. He'll join in some time. So my final question to you all. What's the best part you like about Krishna consciousness? We all have been doing it for some time. Recently or several years, doesn't matter. What's their favorite activity of Hare Krishna?
Kirtan, Prabhuji.
Kirtan Jai.
Chanting, Prabhuji.
Chanting?
Chanting. I love the discipline which comes with it, because sometimes your body is saying no, I cannot get up and I cannot get up, but then the thought comes, no, we have to get up for Krishna, we have to get up.
Yeah.
We have to get up and chant. I love that. Otherwise, we would be so lazy. So that's what I really like, that it has brought so much discipline in my life. No, come what may, like the perseverance, the determination that has brought, okay, we are on the right path, and so just keep going, no, come what may. That's the beauty of it.
Very nice. Bimal Prabhu, what you like?
Same thing, Prabhu, chanting, God, Srila Prabhupada Mercy, and all of Guru Maharaj, or Diksha Guru's Mercy, daily 3:30 for past maybe 1.5 years I'm chanting. Make it a bit. 3:30 chanting starts and by 6:30 chanting is done.
Very good. Very good. Keep it up.
I like so much, the chanting. That time is so precious time. I'm very cautious because I cannot do this morning time. No, then I should thank you to Krishna also. He guided me. I was actually doing 4:30 Bangla Aarti, and it was saying 40-45 minutes. He guided, chanting is first preference. Focus on chanting, and then you can do Bangla Aarti. So that helped me a lot, and that 45 minutes I'm going to do 5 hours.
Very nice. Very nice. Sandeep Prabhu, how about you?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you for a nice class. Yeah,
Yeah.
so definitely, Prabhuji. I think recently joined, but I'm enjoying. Definitely, chanting is, as Prabhuji and Mataji said, right? Chanting is definitely coming, like bringing me to a discipline thing. I know I have to do chanting at this time. I take out time and make sure I'm doing my chanting. And second thing, seva and listening to the classes. I think that's the classes give you good knowledge and know a lot about Krishna. And
You're
seva, definitely helps to bring you to the doing good things.
very good. Mother Gunjan, aap?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare
For
Krishna.
me also, for me also, it is the same thing, almost the same answer, like the discipline that we really get with Krishna consciousness, and we are saved from doing from the bad association many a times, because we already are not overwhelmed, we are so much busy in doing all these, like the chanting and then cooking the food, offering the bhoga to Krishna. There's so many activities involved, right? So we are always busy in this. There is no chance for the mind to run behind the maya, or the bad association. So even if there are some friends' birthday parties, I prefer to go to the temple if there is, something going on in the temple. Like there is always some activity. So many a times I have missed that as kind of association, materialistic association, and gone. So I like that a lot because I'm heading in the right direction. I get a pleasure from that. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Savita, you? What's your favorite activity in Hare Krishna?
I would say kirtan and lectures.
Great. Did I miss out anyone? Vandana Mataji?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, I told Kirtan, but I wanted to add one more thing to that. Hearing lectures from Prabhujis and Guru Maharaj, Gurus and Swamis, that also is very enlightening. Every time you hear a lecture, you feel that, there's so much to read, but it's okay if I'm not able to read, I'm able to hear the lecture. And even if I repeat and listening, hearing the same lecture again, I feel that I learned something different in the lecture.
There is a small little secret which I'll share with everyone. Like so many devotees have expressed, one of their favorite activities is listening, Shravanam, listening, which is the basis. We see through our ears. Spiritual, anything spiritual is seen through the ears, not with the eyes, ears. So since you already have this affinity to listening, if you want to sharpen that, and if you want to really, really make progress, include reading. Doesn't matter if you read one page, doesn't matter if you read one paragraph, but please make a habit of reading systematically. So if you're taken the Bhagavad Gita, open the Bhagavad Gita and start from Prabhupada's forward, the overview. Actually, those first 35 pages covers the entire Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada has so nicely laid it out. And these things, reading is like a friend that every time you read, you'll get more and more realization. The same thing you read over and over again, you'll get newer and newer. That's the beauty of the spiritual text. So when we read, in addition to listening, then that, how do you say, that cleaning of our consciousness. Right now, we are all in this I, me, myself, this, we are here. This is our consciousness. And you can see these different colors are there, it's mixed. But when reading comes, reading is like taking a massive power wash. So listening and reading is also a type of listening. So my humble request is, if you can include in your schedule, whatever time you have, make out some time and read Prabhupada's book. Start with the Bhagavad Gita. If you have Bhagavatam, get a set of, actually Bhagavatam sets are now on sale for Bhadra Purnima at a discounted price. So read the Bhagavatam. So many books Prabhupada has written. Make a habit of reading. Every day read a little bit. And then just see the, when you sit for a lecture or a class, or you're listening to a pravachan, see the difference that it makes. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your participation. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Thank you, Prabhuji. It was very wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll bring it to a close. I think Simeshwar Prabhu must be busy on the altar or some other service. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha
Patitanam pavanebhyo
Vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. Granthra Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Samaveta Gaur Bhakta Vrind ki jai.
Jai.
Gaur Premanandi.
Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for the wonderful class. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna, Jai Prabhupada.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.